What if the hero we admire most is secretly a monster? Hercules, the epitome of strength, the vanquisher of beasts. Yet, what if his celebrated 12 labours were not acts of valour, but a penance, a desperate flight from the monster within, a darkness threatening to engulf him and all he held dear? Prepare to see the legend through a different lens. We begin not with a hero's welcome, but with divine infidelity and a queen's torment. Zeus, king of the gods, powerful and insatiable, cast his gaze upon Alcmena, wife of Amphitryon, the valiant ruler of Thebes, absent on campaign. Alcmena, renowned for her beauty, virtue, and lineage tracing back to Perseus, the slayer of Medusa, possessed a nobility that captivated even a god. Zeus, desiring a son of unmatched strength and destined for greatness, saw in their union the perfect vessel. But Alcmena, fiercely loyal to her husband, would never willingly betray him. Zeus, ever cunning, assumed Amphitryon's form, appearing before Alcmena as if returned victorious from battle. Under this divine deception, the night stretched into 3, time itself manipulated by Zeus to ensure the conception of a hero unlike any other. Thus, Hercules was born, half god, half mortal, his fate intertwined with both Olympus and the harsh realities of the mortal realm. Upon Amphitryon's true return, he sensed a disturbance, a distance in Alcmena's eyes. Confused and troubled, he sought the wisdom of Tiresias, the blind prophet, who revealed Zeus's deception and the divine paternity of the child Alcmena carried. Imagine the king's shock, discovering his wife chosen by a god to bear a legendary heir. Yet, Amphitryon, a man of honour, embraced Alcmena and vowed to raise Hercules as his own, understanding the extraordinary destiny bestowed upon him. Zeus, brimming with pride, declared that the first child born of the Perseid lineage that day would inherit a vast kingdom. Hercules' destiny appeared sealed, a future of power and glory ordained by the king of the gods. But Hera, Zeus's eternally jealous wife, could not tolerate the prospect of a mortal child, a constant reminder of her husband's infidelity, ascending to such heights. With her divine power, she intervened, delaying Alcmena's labour while simultaneously accelerating the birth of Eurystheus, another Perseid descendant. Through Hera's cunning machinations, Eurystheus was born first, usurping the throne destined for Hercules. Hera's malice did not end there. Even in his infancy, Hercules faced her wrath. She dispatched 2 monstrous serpents to his cradle, intending to eliminate the threat before it could mature. But even as a babe, Hercules possessed extraordinary strength. He instinctively grasped the snakes, crushing the life from them with his bare hands. This act, witnessed in awe and disbelief, foreshadowed the extraordinary feats that lay ahead, solidifying the belief that Hercules was destined for greatness, no matter how hard Hera tried to destroy him. Hercules grew under the watchful eye of Amphitryon, who instructed him in the arts of war and instilled in him a sense of justice and responsibility. Though denied the throne, Hercules was destined for a different kind of legacy, one forged through trials and tribulations that would etch his name into the annals of legend. His life, despite his divine heritage, was far from idyllic. From birth, he was a target, a pawn in the celestial games of the gods. Hera's relentless hatred cast a long shadow over his existence, foreshadowing the immense challenges that awaited him, challenges that would test his strength, his intellect, and his very soul. To understand the tragic circumstances that led to Hercules' famed labours, we must delve into one of the darkest chapters of his life. As Hercules matured, his reputation as a warrior and protector of the weak spread throughout Greece. He was not simply strong, he embodied the ideal of a hero, capable of confronting any danger. But Hera, unrelenting in her animosity, remained determined to break him. Fate intertwined Hercules' life with that of Megara, daughter of Creon, king of Thebes. He married her, and they bore several children. After years of hardship, it seemed Hercules had finally found peace and happiness. But Hera, consumed by her hatred, would not allow him such solace. She decided this time her attack would be especially cruel, especially painful. Hera inflicted upon Hercules a fit of madness, a blinding rage that shattered his perception of reality. In this state of delirium, he committed an unspeakable act, a tragedy that would forever haunt him. Consumed by uncontrollable fury, he murdered his own children, and according to some accounts, even his beloved wife Megara. When his sanity returned, the horrifying truth crashed upon him, plunging him into the depths of despair and guilt. The weight of his actions threatened to crush him, leaving him broken and lost. The hero, now a monster in his own eyes, sought atonement. What followed this act of madness dictated the course of his future. The osteommersion technique, Yarchi detale. Hercules, broken by unimaginable grief, found himself adrift in a sea of despair. The blood of his children stained not just his hands, but his very soul. Sleep offered no escape, only horrifying replays of his madness. He was a hero undone, a legend shattered by the cruel hand of fate, or rather, the relentless hatred of Hera. This wasn't the glorious Hercules celebrated in songs. This was a man wrestling with the monstrous truth of his actions. Consumed by guilt and a desperate need for redemption, Hercules journeyed to Delphi. The sacred oracle of Apollo, shrouded in mist and whispers, held the key to his salvation. He sought guidance, a path to cleanse the unspeakable stain on his conscience. The oracle, channeling the will of the gods, delivered a chilling decree. Hercules must serve Eurystheus, king of Mycenae, and complete whatever tasks were set before him. Why Eurystheus? This was Hera's final twist of the knife. Through her machinations, Eurystheus, born prematurely, had been granted the throne that rightfully belonged to Hercules. Now, the mighty hero, the son of Zeus, was forced to kneel before a weaker, less capable king. It was a humiliation designed to break his spirit, to grind him into dust. Eurystheus, acutely aware of Hercules' superior strength and lineage, trembled at the prospect of having him in his service. Fear fueled his cunning. He resolved to assign Hercules seemingly impossible labours, tasks so perilous that they would either lead to his death or, at the very least, keep him far away from Mycenae. These labours would become known as the 12 Labours of Hercules, a testament to his strength, endurance, and ultimately his unwavering determination to atone for his sins. These weren't mere errands. They were trials forged in the fires of divine wrath and personal tragedy. Thus began the epic saga of redemption. Each labour was a step further on a long and arduous path. Hercules wasn't just battling monsters, he was fighting his own inner demons, the echoes of his horrific act that continued to haunt him. He sought not glory, but forgiveness. He understood that true heroism lay not in brute strength, but in the willingness to confront one's own darkness and emerge, however scarred, into the light. Following the oracle's decree and the humiliating audience with Eurystheus, Hercules ventured into the Peloponnese. This marked the start of his legendary trials, forever etching tapestry of myth. The first labour, a seemingly straightforward task, was anything but. He was tasked with slaying the Nemean Lion, a beast of immense size and ferocity whose hide was impervious to all weapons. The Nemean Lion terrorized the region of Nemea, a small valley in the Peloponnese. Locals lived in constant fear, their livestock decimated, their lives perpetually under threat. Rumours swirled about the lion's origins, some whispering that it was a spawn of Typhon and Echidna, monstrous beings representing primal chaos. Its hide, golden and impenetrable, was said to be blessed by the gods themselves, rendering it immune to spears, swords, and arrows. Countless attempts to kill the beast had ended in failure, only fueling its legend and increasing the villagers' despair. It devoured both animals and humans with equal brutality, leaving behind a trail of destruction and terror. Fear of the Nemean Lion spread throughout Greece, and nobody dared to challenge it. Only Hercules could undertake such a dangerous mission. He understood the immense challenge ahead, but he couldn't turn away from his fate. Reaching Nemea, Hercules began to track the lion, carefully studying its movements. He soon discovered that the beast resided in a cave with 2 entrances, making it incredibly difficult to corner. It would ambush its prey, then vanish into the second entrance before it could be attacked. Observing the lion's habits, Hercules began to formulate a plan. He realized that brute force alone wouldn't be enough to defeat this creature. Initially, he attempted to use his weapons. Hercules drew his bow and fired several arrows at the lion, but they simply bounced off its hide as if striking solid rock. Frustrated, he devised a different strategy. He located a massive boulder and used his incredible strength to block one of the cave entrances, trapping the lion inside. This left the beast with no escape route. As the lion returned to its lair, Hercules lay in wait. He knew that weapons were useless. His only hope lay in his raw strength and his will to survive. The lion, sensing danger, roared and charged at Hercules. The ensuing battle was a clash of titans, man and beast locked in a desperate struggle for survival. The lion clawed and bit, trying to tear Hercules apart, but the hero, using his agility and immense power, dodged the attacks and seized the moment to grab the lion by the throat. His powerful hands, like iron vices, began to squeeze the beast windpipe. Despite its immense strength, the lion could not break free. Gradually its breath grew weaker, and finally it succumbed. Triumphant, Hercules sought a way to prove his victory. He attempted to skin the lion, but even this proved to be a challenge. Ordinary knives and swords could not pierce its hide. Finally, he used the lion's own claws to skin the beast. This trophy became more than just proof of his victory. It became a protective shield. The lion's hide was impenetrable, and Hercules wore it as armor, using the lion's head as a helmet. The image of Hercules clad in the Nemean Lion skin became iconic. This symbol represented not only his strength, but also his ability to overcome impossible obstacles. He had transformed a threat into a defense, and a monster into a symbol of his triumph. The victory over the Nemean Lion was significant. It was Hercules' first labor, and it immediately demonstrated to the world that this hero was not just strong, but also intelligent, resourceful, and willing to face any challenge. He had not only destroyed a monster, but he had also restored peace to the people of Nemea. This feat marked the beginning of his journey to immortal fame. Returning to Eurystheus, Hercules, covered in glory, expected praise. Instead, he received a new and even more dangerous task. This time, he was sent to the swamps of Lerna, where a terrifying monster dwelled, striking fear into even the bravest warriors, the Lernaean Hydra. This creature, possessing multiple heads, embodied chaos and destruction, its venom poisoning the land, water, and air. The Lernaean Hydra was no ordinary beast. It originated from the deepest darkness of ancient myths, its parents being Typhon and Echidna, who spawned an entire army of monsters. The Hydra amidst the swampy plains. Its heads, the number of which varied in the myths from 9 to 50 or even 100, possessed a terrifying characteristic. For every head cut off, 2 more would grow back in its place. What happened next changed everything. Immersion technique. Детализированное описание. The Hydra. A legend whispered in hushed tones, a creature born of nightmares. Hercules knew this battle would be unlike any he had faced. He would need more than brute strength. His nephew, Iolaus, a bright and resourceful young man, accompanied him. They journeyed to the accursed swamps of Lerna, ready to face the horror lurking within. Torches were their weapons and bravery was their shield. The air hung thick and heavy with the stench of decay. The swamp itself seemed to breathe with a malevolent life. The Lernaean swamp was a vile place. Thick poisonous vapours rose from the stagnant water. In the heart of this desolation a dark cave yawned, the Hydra's lair. Hercules fired flaming arrows into the cave mouth. A deafening roar echoed across the swamp. The earth trembled as the Hydra emerged, a writhing mass of serpentine necks and gaping maws. Legend spoke of this place as untouchable. Birds shunned the skies above, and any creature foolish enough to stray into its domain quickly succumbed to the poison. The Hydra was even more terrifying than the tales suggested. Its multiple heads, each tipped with razor-sharp teeth, lashed out with blinding speed. Venom dripped from its fangs, searing the ground where it fell. Hercules attacked with furious abandon. He swung his club, crushing one head after another, but a horrifying phenomenon occurred. From each severed neck, 2 new heads sprouted, hissing and snapping with renewed ferocity. Hercules was overwhelmed. Victory seemed impossible. Aeolus, witnessing the seemingly endless regeneration, understood the problem. Fire, that was the answer. He grabbed a burning torch and began cauterizing the stumps as Hercules severed the heads. The flames halted the growth of new heads. The Hydra's advance faltered. But the central head remained. It was immortal, radiating a palpable aura of evil. It spewed a thick green venomous mist, capable of killing anything that dared to breathe it. Hercules fought with unwavering courage, dodging the deadly spray, his muscles screaming in protest. He finally managed to sever the immortal head. But even detached, it continued to writhe, its fangs snapping uselessly. Hercules knew he could not leave it to fester. He dug a deep pit and buried the head, pinning it down with a massive boulder. The land was safe for now. Triumphant but weary, Hercules collected the Hydra's blood. It was a potent poison, capable of inflicting death with the smallest scratch. He dipped his arrows in the venom, transforming them into deadly weapons. These arrows would prove invaluable in the trials to come. Eurystheus, however, refused to acknowledge this labour. He argued that Hercules had received assistance from Aeolus. The task, therefore, was not completed alone. Hercules knew the truth. He had conquered not only the Hydra, but also the fear that it represented. He had stared into the face of unimaginable evil and emerged victorious. The Hydra's defeat stood as courage and ingenuity. It was proof that even the most terrifying monsters could be overcome. The Nemean Lion's hide and the Hydra's venom became powerful symbols of Hercules' journey. The king had to give him another labour, though. This task required more than just strength. It demanded patience and cunning. Eurystheus, determined to break Hercules, ordered him to capture the Lernaean hind, a sacred animal of the goddess Artemis. The Lernaean hind was no ordinary deer. Its antlers were made of pure gold, and its hooves were fashioned from bronze. Its movements were swift and graceful. The hind was sacred to Artemis, a symbol of purity in the wild. To harm it would be to incur the wrath of the goddess. Eurystheus knew this. He sought to trap Hercules in a moral dilemma. Either he defied the gods or he failed his task. Capturing the hind was an immense challenge. It possessed incredible speed, enabling it to outrun any pursuer. It could not be injured, not even a scratch. Artemis would be furious. Hercules understood that brute force would be useless. He hind, studying its habits and routes. The hunt stretched on for a year. Hercules followed the hind across mountains and valleys, from sun-drenched forests to shadowy groves. He faced treacherous terrain and scorching heat, but he persisted. He observed the hind's movements. It favoured the cool morning air and often drank from the Ladon River. Finally, Hercules cornered the hind near the Ladon River. The location was surrounded by a dense forest. The river flowed swiftly, and the banks were soft and mossy, the perfect spot for the hind to rest. Hercules hid behind the trees, aiming his bow. He had to be precise. He couldn't seriously hurt it. His arrow flew, striking the hind between its forelegs. He approached the weakened animal cautiously, careful not to cause further harm. He gently picked it up and carried it to Eurystheus. The king was awestruck by the hind's beauty. He wanted to keep it for himself. Hercules allowed this. He skillfully distracted Eurystheus and released the hind. It bounded away, returning to Artemis's sacred grove. Hercules had demonstrated not only obedience but also respect for the divine. This labour represented patience, cunning, and reverence for nature and the gods, the Lernaean hind part of his trials. It was a lesson to all who heard the story. Strength isn't always the answer. Sometimes, Patience and respect are the keys to victory. But that was only the beginning. What if everything you thought you knew about a hero was a lie? We celebrate Hercules, the strong man, the slayer of monsters. But what if his 12 labours weren't acts of heroism, but a desperate attempt to escape a darkness within himself, a darkness that threatened to consume not only him, but everyone around him? Prepare to question you. Hercules had just completed the captivating challenge of the Lernaean Hind. King Eurystheus, eager to humiliate the hero and prove his insignificance, devised another task. This time, Hercules was ordered to capture alive the fearsome Erymanthian boar. This beast terrorized the inhabitants of Sophis and Erymanthus. It was distinguished not only by its enormous size, but also by its incredible strength and aggression. Capturing it alive seemed nearly impossible, but Eurystheus, driven by envy and fear of Hercules, hoped that the hero would perish trying to complete this task. After hearing detailed accounts from locals about the boar's destructive impact, Hercules understood that he faced a difficult challenge. People said that the boar destroyed fields, attacked homes, and killed anyone who dared approach its territory. To defeat such a creature, not only strength and courage were required, but also cunning. Armed with a bow, spear, and strong rope, Hercules set off into the Erymanthian mountains. Along the way, he carefully studied the boar's tracks to understand its habits. The hero also learned that during the winter months the snow significantly hampered the movement of even the most agile beast. This fact became key to his plan. Hercules spent several days searching for the boar's tracks, gradually approaching its lair. Finally, he found the beast enjoying the destruction of one of the villages at the foot of the mountain. Slowly, Hercules began to drive the boar higher and higher into the mountains, where the snow was particularly deep. The boar, unable to move quickly, began to tire, and Hercules used this moment to throw a strong rope over it. The beast resisted desperately, but Hercules, with his incredible strength, managed to tame it and tie it up. Hercules placed the boar on his shoulder and headed for Mycenae. Seeing Hercules with the giant beast, the king was so frightened that he hid in a huge bronze jar. This moment became one of the most memorable in the myths of Hercules, symbolizing not only the hero's strength but also the cowardice of those who tried to humiliate him. However, Hercules' path to success wasn't without its obstacles. On his way back from Erymanthus, the hero stopped to visit a hospitable centaur named Pholus. The centaur invited Hercules to his hearth and offered him a rest. As a treat, Pholus offered wine that belonged to all the centaurs. However, as soon as the wine was opened, its aroma spread throughout the area, attracting other centaurs. The centaurs, smelling the aroma, became enraged. They considered this wine sacred and common property, and therefore perceived the actions of Pholus and Hercules as an insult. A fight began, and the centaurs attacked the hero. Hercules defended himself, using his bow and arrows poisoned with hydra venom. The battle was fierce, and Hercules emerged victorious, but not without consequences. One of the victims accidentally became Chiron, a wise and immortal centaur who taught many heroes. Hercules, shocked by his mistake, tried to help, but the poison was too strong. Chiron suffered from the pain but could not die, as he was immortal. In the end, Chiron voluntarily renounced his immortal nature to find peace. This episode became an important lesson for Hercules. His strength could bring not only salvation, but also destruction. The incident with the centaurs underscored the complexity of the moral choices Hercules faced. It wasn't just a conflict of strength, but also a moment of realization that even the strongest and most valiant heroes aren't immune to mistakes. The Erymanthian boar symbolized strength and untamed nature, but Hercules managed to show patience and strategy to deal with it. This feat showed that brute force doesn't always lead to victory. Sometimes, cunning, observation, and the ability to use circumstances to one's advantage are more important. The conflict with the centaurs illustrated how easily chaos can be provoked by disrupting harmony. Hercules learned to accept the consequences of his actions, understanding that great power requires great responsibility. The Erymanthian boar became not only a test of Hercules' physical strength, but also of his moral qualities. Each task enriched his experience and brought him closer to understanding his own nature and role in the world. After Hercules had dealt with these difficult trials, he was given one of the most unexpected and seemingly absurd tasks to clean the Augean stables. This feat, despite its apparent simplicity, is actually an example of how Hercules combined his incredible strength with wisdom and ingenuity. Once, at the behest of King Eurystheus, Hercules was assigned the task of cleaning the stables of Augeas, the king of Elis, which hadn't been cleaned for 30 years. Given that these stables contained thousands of animals and they left behind an incredible amount of manure, the task seemed virtually impossible. However, Hercules approached the solution to this problem with incredible courage and ingenuity. His plan was to divert the course of 2 rivers, the Alpheus and the Peneus, which flowed near the stables. He decided to direct their waters through the stables so that they could wash away all the accumulated pollution. This decision was not only bold but also extremely difficult, as it demanded control of massive water flows, which was extremely dangerous. Hercules dug channels from the riverbeds, and their waters flowed into the stables, cleaning them of all the dirt. In just one day, Hercules coped with this colossal task, and the stables became perfectly clean. This feat would have been almost impossible for any other hero, but Hercules, showing all his strength and strategic mind, managed to accomplish it. However, despite the effectiveness of this solution, Hercules' feat wasn't perceived by everyone as absolutely heroic. Many people in ancient Greece believed that using natural resources such as rivers or completing tasks in this way wasn't quite heroism. Some found it difficult to accept that a feat that seemed to be the result of human strength and skill was actually carried out by interfering with natural processes. This caused controversy, and many believed that Hercules' feat wasn't pure and noble enough. What? Some in ancient Greece even questioned whether his actions truly qualified as heroism. It was difficult for some feat seeming skill was actually achieved through. This sparked controversy. Many felt Heracles' accomplishment lacked purity and nobility. Yet beyond the physical aspect, Heracles' labour carried symbolic weight. Cleaning the Augean stables became a metaphor. It represented purging accumulated negativity and overcoming obstacles. This feat highlights that tackling challenges requires both strength and intellect. Heracles demonstrated that even seemingly impossible tasks are solvable with cunning and courage. Thus, despite the criticism, this labour became a milestone in Heracles' life. It showed that combining strength and intellect leads to success. Next, Heracles faced the Stymphalian birds. This story blends heroism, cunning, and a touch of the absurd. The task might seem simple, if not for the birds themselves, monstrous creatures Heracles encountered. These weren't ordinary birds. Bred by Ares, the god of war, they posed a deadly threat. While appearing as giant birds, their features made them incredibly dangerous. Their feathers were bronze. They could pierce armour with ease. They launched them like arrows, causing carnage. Even more terrifying, their beaks and claws were lethal. King Eurystheus, always seeking to complicate Heracles' life, deemed eliminating these birds a worthy trial. Heracles was ordered to Stymphalos and end the menace. The difficulty lay not only in the birds' danger but also in reaching them. The lake was surrounded by impassable swamps. Its waters were dark and viscous like a trap. On his way, Heracles stopped at Athena's temple seeking guidance. The goddess of wisdom admired his courage. She decided to help. She gifted him 2 gleaming bronze crotala crafted by Hephaestus. These instruments produced a deafening sound. Use these to scare the birds from their hiding places, Athena advised. She knew a direct assault would be suicidal. When Heracles reached the swamps, he saw an ominous sight. Feathers littered the marsh, sticking out like spears. The air hummed with the metallic clang of the birds' wings. They hid in the thicket, unseen but poised to strike. Heracles realized he needed strategy. He positioned the crotala at the swamp's edge and began to clash them together. The landscape. The birds, unaccustomed to such noise, panicked. They burst from their cover. Their formations broke. Chaos ensued. Heracles wasted no time. Grabbing his bow, he fired arrows one after another. Each arrow found its mark, striking down the birds. But the battle was far from over. There were too many. Some birds attacked, showering him with their sharp feathers. Heracles, protected by his shield and the Nemean Lion's impenetrable hide, continued shooting. He methodically eliminated the enemies. As most birds fell, the remaining ones tried to escape. Heracles, using his vast experience and agility, chased after them. He plunged the swamp. He stopped only when the last cry of those dreadful creatures faded into the mist. After completing the task, Heracles returned to Eurystheus with proof of his victory. This feat symbolized how courage and divine support can overcome any obstacle. It reminded people that even in the darkest corners of nature, monsters lurk. But a true hero always finds a way to conquer them. Following his successes in Greece, Heracles needed to prove his fame abroad. His labours grew more complex. King Eurystheus sought trials capable of breaking even the greatest hero. One such task was capturing the Cretan bull, an animal wreaking havoc on the island. Heracles had just returned to Tiryns after cleaning the Augean stables. Barely catching his breath, he stood before Eurystheus, awaiting his next assignment. Eurystheus, wanting to make life difficult, suggested he travel to Crete. A massive bull roamed there, terrorizing the inhabitants. This was the bull Poseidon had once gifted to King Minos. The story of the Cretan bull wasn't simply about a maddened animal. It was linked to divine intrigues and human weakness. Minos, king of Crete, prayed to Poseidon for a sign confirming his right to the throne. The sea god sent him a magnificent white bull intended as a sacrifice. However, captivated by its beauty, Minos kept it live. He sacrificed another bull instead. This decision angered Poseidon. He cursed the bull, making it wild and unmanageable. The bull escaped the palace, destroying villages and trampling crops. It became a true menace. Legend also held that this bull fathered the monstrous Minotaur, imprisoned in the labyrinth. The people of Crete believed it cursed. Only divine intervention could stop it. Heracles set out, full of resolve. The journey to Crete was difficult. He faced a long sea voyage across the dangerous Aegean Sea. When he arrived, the inhabitants greeted him, begging for help. Each told how the bull trampled vineyards, destroyed homes, and killed livestock. Seeing their suffering, Heracles understood he had to end the chaos. The bull was enormous and savage. Its horns gleamed. Its eyes burned with rage. Heracles knew he faced a formidable challenge. He would have to use skill to subdue the beast. The bull charged, bellowing. Heracles stood his ground, ready to meet the challenge head-on. The battle was fierce. The earth trembled under the bull's hooves. Heracles dodged its attacks, using his agility to avoid its sharp horns. He waited for his chance, then leaped onto the bull's back. He gripped its horns tightly, wrestling the animal into submission. With incredible strength, he forced the bull to the ground. Having subdued the beast, Heracles began his journey back to mainland Greece. He faced more trials on the way back, fighting off pirates and sea monsters, but he eventually returned to Eurystheus with the bull. Eurystheus, however, remained unsatisfied. He demanded more, pushing Heracles toward the brink. Everything he knew was about to shatter. The islanders pleaded for help. Each recounted the Cretan bull's destructive path. Vineyards were trampled, homes lay in ruins, livestock perished. Heracles understood. This chaos had to end. The bull was massive. Its horns gleamed menacingly. Rage burned in its eyes. Finding it proved difficult. It hid in the mountains. It only emerged to destroy. Heracles stalked it like a seasoned hunter. Days turned into weeks. Finally, he found it grazing in a valley. A direct attack would be suicide. He needed a plan. Ropes were gathered, traps were considered. The bull saw him. It charged, bellowing. Heracles dodged barely. He began to maneuver. He forced the beast to run in circles. Exhaustion would be his ally. Finally, he struck. He threw a rope. It snagged around a horn. He pulled, hard. The bull stumbled. More ropes followed. Soon, the beast was bound. He chose not to kill it. He would tame it instead. He would show his mastery. He would control the chaos. He led the bull to a ship. The journey back to Tiryns began. Eurystheus panicked at the sight of the beast. He demanded it be removed. Heracles released it. The bull roamed free. It ended up in Marathon. It terrorized the locals. Theseus eventually intervened. He captured the bull. He brought it to Athens. It was sacrificed to the gods. Destruction ceased. This feat was more than strength. It was about taming chaos. It was about restoring order. It was about the consequences of hubris. The Cretan bull remains a reminder. Even the greatest gifts demand responsibility. Broken promises lead to disaster. Heracles faced a new challenge. Eurystheus's demands were relentless. This time he had to travel to Thrace. He was to capture the mares of Diomedes. These were no ordinary horses. They were man-eaters. No mortal could tame them. Their diet of human flesh terrorized the region. This labour demanded more than brute force. It demanded courage. It demanded cunning. The mare's story was intertwined with their owner. Diomedes, king of the Bistones, was infamous. His cruelty was legendary. He fed his enemies to the horses. These savage beasts were locked in fortified stables. They were guarded by a large army. Their sharp teeth could sever metal chains. Fear was their weapon. Heracles gathered his companions. He set out for Thrace. He knew this would be difficult. Information was key. He scouted the fortress. He observed the guards. He learned the layout. Under the cover of night, they infiltrated the fortress. His companions created a diversion. Heracles confronted Diomedes. A fierce battle ensued. The king fought with cunning and strength. Heracles countered with his own skills. He relied on his unmatched power. He defeated Diomedes. One version tells of Heracles feeding Diomedes to the mares. This satiated them, temporarily. It allowed Heracles to control them. He bound them with chains. The long journey back to Mycenae began. The mares remained dangerous. They resisted. They tried to attack. Heracles held them firm. His strength and resolve prevailed. He delivered the animals to Eurystheus. The king was terrified. He ordered the mares released. They posed too great a threat. According to some accounts, they were killed by wild animals. Their legend lived on. This labour was more than a test of strength. It showed he could impose order. He could conquer even the most savage forces. The victory over Diomedes and his mares symbolised justice. It symbolised the triumph of arrangement over chaos. Other tasks followed. The king, ever unsatisfied, demanded another feat. This time it was Hippolyta's girdle. The girdle wasn't just adornment. It symbolised power. It symbolised Hippolyta's leadership. She was queen of the Amazons, a nation of warriors. Ares, the god of war, had given it to her. Eurystheus wanted it for his daughter. Heracles was sent to retrieve it. The Amazons lived in a remote land. It was likely along the Black Sea coast. Reaching them would be a trial. They would cross mountain passes. They would battle raging rivers. They would face hostile tribes. The journey was perilous. Heracles, with his strength, pressed onward. Heracles and his companions reached the Misera. The city was the Amazons' capital. An unusual silence greeted them. Strong wooden walls surrounded the city. Tents and towers were visible. The Amazons watched the strangers. They scrutinized the approaching men. These skilled warriors were ready for any invasion. Hippolyta, their queen, emerged. She was tall and proud. Her golden girdle shimmered. A spear was in her hand. She approached Heracles. She demanded to know his purpose. Heracles bowed respectfully. He explained his mission. Hippolyta surprised everyone with her response. She listened intently, her expression unreadable, then spoke. She offered him the girdle as a gift, impressed by his courage and reputation. A simple exchange, a gesture of respect between warriors, would have completed the labour, but a shadow lurked, whispering doubts and stirring conflict. Hera, the ever-jealous queen of the gods, intervened. She disguised herself as an Amazon and spread rumours. She claimed Heracles had come to kidnap Hippolyta and enslave the Amazons. Suspicion bloomed like poison. The Amazons armed themselves. They prepared for battle. Heracles, caught in a web of deceit, was forced to fight. A bloody battle erupted. The peaceful exchange turned into a brutal conflict. Heracles, though reluctant, fought with his legendary skill. He cut through the Amazon ranks, seeking Hippolyta to explain the misunderstanding. In the chaos, he killed her. He tore the girdle from her lifeless body. He finished his task. He returned to Eurystheus, a victor stained with unnecessary blood. The journey back was sombre. The weight of Hippolyta's death bore heavily on his soul. He had achieved his goal. He secured the girdle. Yet, the victory felt hollow. The deceit of Hera had turned a simple task into a tragedy. The consequences of divine meddling left a bitter taste, everything to shatter. The golden girdle shimmered in the sun. It looked like a symbol of her invincibility. Tall and statuesque, Hippolyta approached Heracles. Her gaze was unwavering, a spear clutched in her hand. She wanted to know the purpose of his visit. Heracles bowed respectfully. He explained his mission. Hippolyta listened intently. Then she answered. She didn't reject his request. Instead, she expressed willingness to hand over the girdle. This would avoid unnecessary bloodshed. Everything seemed to be falling into place perfectly. But the gods of Olympus wouldn't allow the labour to finish so easily. Hera observed the scene from her Olympus throne. She grew displeased that Heracles might succeed without a fight. She decided to intervene with wicked plots. Disguised as an Amazon warrior, Hera appeared in the women's camp. She started spreading insidious rumours. "These men have come to kidnap our queen," she hissed. "They will destroy our city and enslave us." The whispers, fueled by Hera's deceit, spread quickly among the Amazons. Anger and distrust consumed them. The women began gathering weapons. They prepared for battle. Crowds of Amazons streamed into the main square. Their faces were grim with determination. Hippolyta tried to stop her warriors, but it was too late. Hera smiled, pleased with her cunning. She watched as peace turned into furious cries. Amazons surrounded Heracles' camp. Squadrons of warriors poured from the city gates. They rode war horses. Bows were drawn, spears at the ready. Heracles and his companions understood that a fight was unavoidable. They quickly took up defensive positions. The Amazons launched their attack. Their arrows rained down on the camp. These were deadly. Heracles, shielded by a large shield, dodged arrows skillfully. He unleashed his own in return. His companions fought beside him. Yet the Amazons, like a unified force, advanced. They used their combat skills and strategy with deadly effect. Seeing that they were outnumbered, Heracles decided to use his strength and experience. He swung his club, scattering enemies. They flew like dry leaves in an autumn wind. When Amazon surrounded him, he lifted a huge boulder. He threw it, crushing those who charged. His companions, inspired by Heracles' courage, continued to fight valiantly. Hippolyta watched the battle. She saw the suffering it inflicted on her people. She tried again. She stood on the city wall. She loudly called on them to lay down their arms, but their rage was too great. Her voice was lost in the din of battle. In the heat of the fight, Heracles broke through the Amazon ranks. He stood before Hippolyta. Seeing him, the queen realized the war was a mistake. Divine intrigues caused it. She stopped him, raising her hand. "You have proven your strength and valor," she said. "I do not wish for my people to suffer any more. Take the girdle and leave in peace." Heracles looked at her. He saw wisdom and compassion in her eyes. He accepted the girdle. Turning to his companions, he ordered them to retreat. The Amazons, finally realizing the deception, ceased fighting.